which is, I understand them being angry. I understand them being disappointed. But for 20 years or more, they were made promises by people in political life that couldn't be kept. And so I'm coming up to tell them the truth about that. They can't be kept. We have to make changes. We can work together, put my proposal out there. I think it's the one that gets us most solvent, most quickly, with the least amount of disruption. I'm always willing to listen to the legislature if they have other ideas, but the one thing I'm unwilling to accept is inaction. Because inaction will lead to insolvency, and insolvency will lead to the ruination of families who are counting on this pension for their retirement. And I won't stand by and let that happen, whatever the political consequences are. I said during the campaign that I was going to cut income taxes in my first 4 years. Well, wait a second. Listen, I understand the question. I get it, okay? Why do you think that is? See, we have a difference of opinion as to why that is. I believe that revenues continue to decline because once again we saw a study this past week about all the people that are leaving New Jersey because of the incredibly high taxes, the highest in America. And that's why we're losing revenue, in addition to a slowed economy, because we're driving people from this state. $70 billion in wealth driven from this state between 2004 and 2008. And so you think that by cutting taxes, we're going to lose revenue. Listen, New Jersey is the failed experiment of the last decade. Raise taxes and fees 115 times in 8 years and say that'll just continue to grow revenue. It hasn't. It hasn't. It is the failed experiment of the decade. When other people recovered in the early part of the last decade, New Jersey didn't, because those in power made the decision to put the wet blanket of overtaxation on top of New Jersey's economy, and it's why we still sit here today at a 9.6% unemployment rate, the highest in the region. Now, you talk to anybody in New Jersey who works for a living and pays taxes, and they will tell you that they are tired of it. And so, from my perspective, cutting taxes will be an economic growth spur for New Jersey, will make us more competitive with our neighbors, and allow us to compete to bring more private sector jobs in. When we bring more private sector jobs in, those will be people who are paying taxes to the state of New Jersey, and revenue will increase. I understand that some of you out here might have a philosophical difference, but I would just point to the last 10 years, in both good economic times and bad ones, to show you that your model is a failed one. And the people of New Jersey clearly voted for someone who said they were going to do this. And so it's time now to get to work on it. I said inside the first 4 years, and that's what we're going to try to do. Yesterday was a date certain to turn over the documents to the Senate that Barbara Buono has requested. And she's made a number of open requests over time. They've been rolling requests. Some have been responded to. Not all have been, but all will be responded to by Wednesday. And that's what I agreed to do yesterday with the Senate President. Responding to their open requests. I didn't make a deal. The Senate President came in. He said they want the documents. I said we're working on it. He said we need them as soon as possible. Governor, I said, how about Wednesday? He said, okay. And that was it. That's what we did. And that's the way Steve Sweeney and I deal with each other all the time. He told me what he wanted. If I felt like it was reasonable, then I give it to him. If I feel like it's unreasonable, we argue about it. So I wasn't worried about counting votes in the Senate. That's his job. His job is to count votes. I don't count votes in the Senate. He does. So, at the end of the day, we're going to turn over those documents which we believe are appropriate to turn over. If there are areas that we believe are covered by executive privilege, we'll assert them. And we'll go from there. So that's all that really happened yesterday. But once again, I think it's another indication of how bipartisan we can both be. We're working together. He wants to see those documents. The Senate has every right to see them. And he thought we were going slower than we should have. I looked into it. I said to him, fine, we'll get it to you by Wednesday. And now they're going to have a chance to look at them, and then they're going to proceed from there. So I don't think it was anything that was all that groundbreaking, to tell you the truth, but I'm glad to have resolved it amicably without us fighting, because we have a lot of other much more important issues to deal with. The toolkit needs to be dealt with. Pension and benefit reform needs to be dealt with. Education reform needs to be dealt with. COA needs to be dealt with. We have a lot of things we have to deal with. And so I'm glad we're able to resolve this issue appropriately. I thank the Senate President for being willing to come down and talk to me about it. And I think that's been the hallmark of the way we've tried to govern in this administration, which is when we have issues, Senate President, the Speaker, the minority leaders, and I sit down, we talk about it, and those times we can work it out, we work it out. When we can't, we have a fight. And, it's the way it works. I understand the Democratic State Chairman is attempting to conflate these issues, but wishing it doesn't make it so. These have to be two separate decisions. The first decision we need to make is to find out how much the ARC tunnel is going to cost and who's going to pay for it. I was enlightened by the audit report that came out this week that not just suggested but stated that the ARC tunnel construction was rushed to begin without complete plans or approvals by New Jersey Transit to start in June of 2009. I'm sure it was just a coincidence that Governor Corzine wanted that construction to start without complete plans, without complete approvals in June of 2009. I have a vague recollection of what was happening then. And the audit report is significantly critical of their management of this project and has said that it has led to the very real possibility of significant cost overruns. Now, that combined with information we were getting from the Federal Department of Transportation that said that this project could run anywhere from $2 billion to $5 billion over the current $8.7 billion price tag made me say, stop. I cannot spend money I don't have, and I need to know how much this is really going to cost. Christie brought the information to me about the potential magnitude of these cost overruns. I told him to stop. Take a 30-day moratorium. I've spoken to the Secretary of Transportation in Washington, Secretary LaHood. He has committed his experts at Federal DOT to work with New Jersey Transit to come up with a realistic price tag. Once we have that, then we can have a discussion regarding how we do it and how we can pay for it. But here is what I will not do. I don't care how much federal money is involved. I am not taking a flyer on a project that I don't know how to pay every nickel for. And I'm not doing that with the money of the taxpayers of the state of New Jersey. They've had that done to them before. I'm not going to do it. And so deal with the ARC issue. The second issue you raise is the Transportation Trust Fund issue. I've instructed my administration months ago to present to me a variety of options for the reauthorization of the Transportation Trust Fund. I have not yet been presented with any of those options. We're on a timetable to do that in the month of October. When they present the options to me, I will make a decision on what I think is best for the future of the Transportation Trust Fund. And those are two separate issues. And so I'm sure that Mr. Weinstein, Commissioner Simpson, members of my staff are having conversations every week about how there are potential to finance the Transportation Trust Fund. What I'm telling you is that all the options have not yet been brought to me, and I'm not therefore in a position to make a decision. I don't know what all the options are, and I won't know them until the Chief of Staff and the Chief Counsel walk them in with the Commissioner to discuss them with me. And when they do, then I'll make a decision. But before that, I'm not going to. Pass number one. I don't rank next until I get the first one done. So I've got the first one done, so now I got to figure out what's the next most important issue. But I try to keep my focus on what it is I need to do. It was clear to me from meeting with individual shippers, the Shipping Association, the longshoremen, while I was campaigning and then during the transition, that this was such a vital economic issue for New Jersey, right at the core of who we are and what we do. And so from my perspective, this had to be addressed first. And when we had an opportunity at the Port Authority to be able to forcefully make our case for why this went to the very core of the mission of the Port Authority, as Chairman Kosha mentioned in his remarks, I was glad that we were able to prevail upon them, the Board of Commissioners, to see it our way and to commit this $1 billion to fixing this problem. And so, I am going to now look at what the next priority should be. We've got a number of them in New Jersey in terms of our infrastructure. And so the same way I did it with this, I'll continue to talk to stakeholders throughout the state to see what they think the next most important thing we do are. Dusty?